Welcome to the Popcorn Talk Network, for the online broadcast network that features movie discussion, news, and interviews. Press 1. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
I'm opening. We have an eye, sort of a nostril, 2 teeth. One of the teeth has a small cavity. Close call, folks, but I think we got here just in time.
Presented by Maria Menounos and Kevin Undergaro. This is Anatomy of a Movie. In-depth discussions and breakdowns of various movie titles. And now that you've seen the movie, let the dissection begin.
All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Anatomy of a Movie. This week we are speaking about The Danish Girl, and I'm John Comerford, joining in the studio.
Not eating a Danish.
No, not eating a Danish, just speaking about The Danish Girl. And then this is Marisa Serafini.
Hello, everyone.
Sarah Stretton.
Happy New Year.
And Demetri, Panos.
Hello, movie fans, and Happy New Year to you all, folks.
Hey,
and
yes.
to
It's good to be back.
Audience. It is good to be back.
So, directed by Tom Hooper, starring Redmayne and Alicia Vikander. It's written by Lucinda Coxon, and it's based on the novel/true diary by David Evershaw.
Are we already going to get into that debate?
Well, I mean, there's so much to debate here. And first of all, let's just get our overall thoughts about the thing. So, why don't we start with you, Marisa?
I thoroughly enjoyed it, especially just the topic of transgender. I think it's more common in today's society, where I think this is actually probably a good time to release a story like this that people could like flock to and see and relate to in some ways. I thought it was beautifully shot and was beautifully acted, and I'm really excited to talk about this.
Sarah?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I will say that it is a tad on the long side. I thought a friend of mine, it was either a friend of mine or my mother, who was mistakenly calling this the Danish Girls. Like they kept
It's a much different movie. That's a much different movie.
But I actually kind of think that it fits because it does focus on
two girls,
two women. And I enjoyed the acting. I enjoyed a lot of the beauty and the art in this film, but a tad long, and I have some questions. So interested to talk about it.
Okay, Demetri.
Well, first and foremost, I got to talk about, I really did enjoy the direction, the production design, and the cinematography. A very beautiful film to watch. I really enjoyed the performances, but let's make no mistake about it. This is Alicia Vikander's movie. This is her. For me, anyways. If you did not have her strong, wonderful, great performance in this is the movie hinged on that. And if it didn't work, I don't think the rest of this movie would have worked. Eddie Redmayne was great. Another transformation movie, for him, and all the other supporting cast I found to be really good. With that said. Upon researching this movie, certain things...
You did that?
Yeah, I know. Well, and that's the thing. We research the shit out of movies, and that's what we come here to talk about. And I think what ended up ultimately happening to me is story issues, elements, and such. They did not commit one of the biggest movie sins for me, and by at least having the title card at the beginning of the movie saying based on true events, because we had two true characters and everything else is fiction.
It was very murky.
Yeah,
but they had a closing credit with it.
They did have a closing credit with it, which didn't necessarily. Which was interesting as well, because when researching, but we'll talk about story elements.
I think we're redefining true.
Yeah, I think it's a good...
And I think that's been a pattern in a lot of scripts lately, and it just becomes... I almost feel like they need to come up with more sayings than true or inspired by. There needs to be a gradient of what you're saying.
But they didn't say that in this movie. It didn't open. It hasn't been in necessarily the advertising. It wasn't in the opening of the movie. It's not in I
think it was a bit in the marketing. At least in what I heard, it was in the marketing.
Yeah, I don't see it on the poster. I don't, you know, there was no inspired by true events. I mean, everybody knows that. I was really pissed off at Dallas Buyers Club because it relied on that, inspired by true events. I was just amazed as to how much fiction this movie is, and I felt there was a faux boldness to this movie. This movie wanted to be bold, but when I found out actual true elements of this, I'm like, why didn't you? That would have been so interesting. And I don't know if we want to get into that now or bring it up a little later.
I gotta give my overall thoughts.
Please, John.
Because. I don't think I was as enamored of the performances or production design or the directing as any of you here. I think there were moments I thought this was wonderful. It's one of those movies. It's an important film. It's not necessarily a good film, but it's one of those you should see. There are so many things I really liked, and so many things I go, wow, they're going for that, and then it didn't get there. So there were plenty of things I liked, and plenty of things I was just shaking my head going, what are you doing? And then doing the research going, how could you not have this in the story?
Right.
How could you, how could you make that choice over this? I was just baffled and angry because I go, the truth was so much more interesting than what you presented.
I know. I felt,
and you had the source material there.
I felt the same exact way, and it detracted from me because I walked out going, yeah, this was a good movie. Performance is saved. And then when I was reading, going, these choices would have been much more interesting to portray.
Okay, I'm curious as if you have the same... if you all have the same things. Because I have a few I also wanted in this film, but are there any standout, I guess, actual truths that didn't make it there in particular that you felt would have enhanced the story?
They got their marriage was annulled would be interesting. That is the fact that they made it look in the movie that she Lili died right after her surgery or very shortly after, and she didn't. No. And she died years later. And it's like, how did she live as a woman?
And she died of a third surgery.
Yes, exactly.
She died of a fourth surgery.
The fourth surgery.
Yeah,
because in the film there was two surgeries, and then she actually.
But I go that. Well, I want to see that story. It was like, how did she? Because. for so many reasons I wanted to see that.
True. I think to go off of that, had we seen that story, I think it would have played out this timeline just a little bit better for the audience to understand, because I got the notion that a few months have passed and then maybe a few years, but I couldn't even tell. I was like, how far apart were these surgeries, and they said the line a week, and I'm like, it can't be that. It has to be longer. So I, watching it, had a hard time establishing how long did this process actually take.
Yeah.
My biggest problem was, upon reading about it, was that Gerda was either a bisexual or lesbian, and that she continued to have a relationship with Lili, the movie,
18 years.
But they had, in this movie, it seemed as if Lili didn't want a relationship anymore with Gerda, and even saying as far as you need to go out on your own,
exactly.
But because of Gerda's proclivities in real life, that relationship lasted, and I'm like going, see, that would have been bold.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been bold.
I think this movie suffers under a couple of things. I think it suffers because it took so long to get to the screen. Was it 15 years, whatever the hell it was? And so much is transpired. We've got, Trans America, we have Transparent, we have a lot more even going on that it wanted to be really important, it wanted to be bold, and it didn't look bold in the wake of things that had already come before it.
Right.
And had it come out first, it might have been much more, we might have been going, wow, oh my God. But it wasn't bold. It was safe. It was almost, this isn't the right word, I don't know the right word, it was almost boring how by the number it was, for me. Because every chance it had to be bold, I'm going, they're going to go. Oh, they're not. And why did they bother setting it up? I agree,
and it reminded me of it reminded me a little bit of A Theory of Everything because of the relationship with the wife.
Right.
And it also reminded me again of, to me, Imitation Game. Imitation Game was in fact bold. It really talked about what being gay in that time period and what it cost a brilliant man. And I felt in this movie, maybe because it was in the 20s, it just wasn't. There was one scene where there was like when he's walking through the park and he gets beat up. But I thought that there might have been more. But
that scene to me looked obligatory.
Yeah.
And I applaud them because it happens. It still happens today, so I think you need it in the movie, but it wasn't attached to anything, so it looked arbitrary. Didn't come off anything. It was like, we have to have the scene in there, let's put it in here. But it just was, it was not attached to anything, and it didn't look like it really affected in any way an arc.
No.
And I was just, okay, I know you need it, but could you make it work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, everybody seemed to be, that was the other thing. Everybody seemed to know. Like, there was no disguise. Like, if we went to a party, people were like, okay. And then they'd go on, and even people would go to him. It's like, oh, I know. And he
so you don't think he was fooling anybody?
I didn't catch that he was, or she was. I didn't catch that. Because it seemed, like I said...
To me, the bigger surprise on that was when she really comes out the first time and they're at the party, and Lili's there, and she's... And for me, they made it look like all heads turned and looked at her.
Right.
And I went, I don't, if you're standing next to Alicia, I don't know if they're looking at you. Right. I mean, just on a purely objective thing, I'm going, you've got her, you've got, what's her name? Amber Heard.
Amber. Yeah.
I don't think they're looking at her. Mm-hmm. For me, it didn't. Yeah. It was unbelievable. It was. I just couldn't suspend my disbelief that much.
I was sort of the same way.
And it was just, for me, because for that alone, it suffered because they had this great. I love the juxtaposition where you see Gerda painting her as she would want to be. She's an art. She's a piece of art, for crying out loud. People are just, oh my God, she's amazing. But in real life, you kind of get the sense that Lili aspires to be thought of that way, but you never get there in real life. She never really feels.
She never has the
desirous.
essence of the painting.
Yes,
in
and it never
her
gets
everyday
there.
life.
Yeah,
and I think and that's unfortunate because I would want her to grow into that or experience that. And they have moments of it. I mean, the moment when Lili goes into the Peep Show and she's seeing the stripper there, and there's this moment where the stripper sees her and she realizes, wait, she's looking at me differently than everybody else. This is weird. But then they both have this little dance they do, and I'm going, well, I love that moment. I thought that was terrific. That's the only place she can think to go to learn what it's like to be desirous, or learn what it's like to do things that might be desirous.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a great moment. It's a good character moment. And I go, wow, if they could go on that track, and the only other time they did it was when she's standing in front of the full-length mirror and she does the tuck and the whole thing, and you have those, but then it never really goes anywhere after that, and it looks like this external journey, and this is why I didn't appreciate the performance as much. It looked like Eddie Redmayne doing the artifice of what it's like to be a woman, and he's got the look, he's got the arm, he does the coy thing and he's literally batting his eyelashes the first time he's at his Lily, and I'm going, okay, but you would expect that because Lily hasn't been out, she's young, she's immature, she doesn't know what it's like to be a woman. But by the end of the movie, I wanted her to be a woman, and she kept being that child.
I agree with that point. I agree with as much as taking steps forward to create a physical arc. I never really got the embodiment arc of the woman in Eddie Redmayne. But I want to kind of get into a little bit. There's a criticism out there of like his portrayal of Eddie Redmayne's portrayal of like the hands and the batting the eyes and the constant looking down. And people have come out and said they don't like this movie because it seems a little bit put on. But I think that I just want to take this moment to say, I think that's part of the time period we're dealing with for this piece.
I thought it was a time period.
Yeah,
absolutely. I also think
it's the 20s.
You have to,
but it's womanhood
and you have to start
in the 20s,
absolutely,
and how women were treated and
portrayed,
and how they would go out
and responded.
And it was very much, at least in my view, a performance. Like women would go out, and it was to be a specific way and to have.
They were looked at exactly. They were accoutrement,
and that's what made Gerda's character more interesting to me because she wasn't the demure.
Right.
She wasn't that even at a party, but people
exactly.
knew that and accepted her for who she was,
which I appreciated.
And yeah,
but I also was going, but that's why I was going. Your wife isn't that woman, and you have somebody you live with who's a great example.
Exactly.
And and I understand in the beginning. Well, when Lily first makes her appearance, she has to be a performance because she hasn't done it yet.
She's learning.
But you would want to see that progress into something deeper and more full.
But let's face it, everybody saw through the performance, and whether it was at the beginning of the movie with Ben Wishaw's character,
sure, yeah.
Okay, who knew Q? Yeah, he was cute.
Or Herman Melville.
But Herman Melville. Yeah, it's like everybody saw through this. Even his old time friend Hans. Hans was like, as soon as everybody knew that this was a quote unquote a performance, that this who this person was. And I was, and everybody seemed to have been very, his close friends seemed to be accepting of it. It's like, well, we can get him help or
except
whatever.
for the two obligatory guys that
who just show.
And I think that was my issue with watching everyone who Lily was surrounded by. That like these male figures, very dominant male figures, we could say, that like no one really opposed her or opposed him. In his actions and whatnot, everyone was pretty supportive in a way. There wasn't a big major conflict that would have maybe helped build his internal mentality of like, no, I am, him
I think
fighting.
The movie is trying to suggest society was against it, but I think what you're suggesting is that you wanted a personification of that.
Yeah, I wanted someone to be there to actually question him and have an established conflict. For
again, and I'll probably get
crucified.
And I think
they were trying to do that with her. But
I was just going to say I'll probably get crucified for comparing this to to another movie outside of looking at this on its own. But when you looked at The Imitation Game. There was that struggle of not coming out and what that meant to the relationship. Again, this above and beyond, to me anyways, the way that Danish Girl plays out is a relationship movie.
Oh yeah, that's definitely what they're going for.
It's a relationship
Love conquers
movie.
all the whole time.
Absolutely, and this is where I feel too, where Gerda, as portrayed in this movie, as written and performed, like it was that love conquers all, but love is also an amazing support system.
And love can transform.
I mean, this was a marriage transformed, so to speak. And again, I was thinking of Keira Knightley and Benedict Cumberbatch in Imitation Game, in their relationship, and again, how Keira Knightley's character was like, listen, I get it, I'm going to support you, and she went on and had her own life. But it was really weird because in this movie, it didn't really showcase, outside of that one scene in the park, like how disastrous it may have been to his life. It seemed most people were very accepting. That could have been the 20s, for all I know, because transgender wasn't a word that was there.
They didn't shine a huge light on their hardships.
No.
Like, whether it be the park that took up 2 minutes, or there be like the single line where she's like, "You're not painting anymore. We don't have money to buy this dress."
Yeah.
Like it was put in there, but not really dealt with.
I was curious about that because when they had the moments between the husband and wife, and I loved I loved the potential of it, which is I care about you so much that I want who you are to live, to have a life, a full life, and in so doing, I'm going to lose my husband, the person I love, and that's how selfless I'm going to be at the end of this.
Yeah,
it's it's a great art, and it's wonderful. And they have those just a few moments between the two, but they didn't really mind that for all it's worth.
No.
And if it wanted to be a relationship movie, then stick with that, and I would have been okay with it. And then all of a sudden now we're going to do, we're all about the surgery, we're all about and it's all about and I'm going. And it just took this weird turn.
Yeah.
I think it's how the script is laid out, and I think that how it does turn towards that, the surgeries in the end, how that section comes across, is we don't really get to explore him, as you said,
what she's going through,
what she is going through, what she becomes, what that surgery enables her to do. Everything is dealt with so quickly at certain points. Like if you, there's an instance where she's selling perfume, and that would be her life and something she's excelling at, but it's so quick.
I know.
We don't get to meet anyone in that world.
But you can see the hint of what, she almost feels like a whole person there.
Right.
And I'm going, this is...
She's going to build up friendships and...
But we don't meet anyone. We don't get immersed.
Because it's presented and then...
Yes.
And I went, Yeah. And that's why I kept getting frustrated, because I'm going, if you're gonna go down the road, don't just... Right.
It was just funny to me, just even how it was filmed. Sometimes I would catch myself thinking on anything that was kind of situational or about the world, where you're getting your wide shots of a store or of a park or outside. Anything that was wide shot was kind of brushed over. And anything that was on your close-up, you got to spend an eternity there over and over and over again.
Right.
So you're constantly getting...
Close up.
Yeah, you're just getting emotion. Yeah. You get to see a lot of acting shine through, and there was a lot going on. Like, I felt like all the actors were changing, especially Alicia. Like, tons going on. But it made me feel for the actor and not the world. I kept being like, wow. And then I'd be like, so what's going on? Because in that I was just getting
the context.
Wide brush.
Yeah, it was
Close
kind
up.
It's almost like we got the through line of the context. Like, we have to get back to the story. Here, throw some.
Yeah. Here, show this image of what's happening, and then go back. But
and they said, when they started, the director of photography, Danny Cohen, he said that Tom Hooper's, the way he works is that he likes very, very shallow depth of field, and he always directs the audience. This is the most important thing in a scene to look at. So I think we got a lot of the close-ups of the things that were the most storytelling and most present in each scene.
Okay, but since you just brought it up, I want to bring this up, and it's going to take me a second to get there. So. Patience, please. Okay,
everyone.
It drives me crazy the way that this part of Tom Hooper's direction, because for me, I can see it, and I don't want to see it. I mean, any movie you go to is a manipulation. I mean, it's a manipulation of light, sound, all that kind of stuff, feeling, character, music, all that kind of stuff. But I don't want to see the manipulation happening, because I just don't, because it takes me out of the movie. And he does he likes to short frame, and it drives me nuts. And that's my term for it. I can't remember what Anyway, so when you're doing a scene with two people, does anybody know what I'm talking about? The show, and he puts some offset, and it drives me crazy, because every time he does it, I go, why are you doing it? Because I talked to him after the King speech came out, and I had a moment, and I asked him why he short framed in that movie, especially when the King meets the tutor, and he goes, well, because it's an awkward scene, I want the audience to feel awkward, and so I did that. And I go, and I'd asked him, I said, was the acting not already awkward? Did it not feel... And he's like, why? And then all of a sudden he goes, who are you asking me this question? But we had a short conversation about it, and I'm going, I don't get it, because what happens to me as an audience member as I'm watching this, I start, rather than be awkward about, this is not, it's like him telling me I'm supposed to be awkward or feel awkward, rather than have it be awkward and have me feel that. And it feels heavy-handed. It feels like he doesn't trust the story or the actors. And I see his direction, and now I'm out of the movie looking at it critically, rather than being part of the story and having it happen to me.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts.
It doesn't drive me nuts. Because I still am able to enjoy it. I think that it does... How I watch this movie is a different mindset than something I can truly get immersed in, which is why I consider this a very good movie, but it's not going to be a favorite movie or not a great movie.
For me, because what it does is, that whole thing that we wanted was to feel more about Lily's character. It's already an artifice, so that's hard to get through that. Right. And then we're seeing another layer that the director is putting on there. I'm going, so that's even farther removed from being relating. And I'm going, you're in the way now. Instead of enhancing, you're at your movies at the expense of, and that's why. Because even there were times when he put her in the middle of the frame. Right. And it's like, what's with the headroom? What? So she's small in the frame. Am I supposed to feel, the poor thing now? What? Why are you doing this? See, and it takes me out of the movie.
That's fun. Well, I just learned something new about you. That's
you
which
don't
is
like
great.
Shallow depth of field.
And again, it's weird because I didn't feel like I was manipulated in this movie. I felt the movie went along. I enjoyed the direction. To me, it just came down to story elements. And in an interview too, because it has been mentioned that this could be somewhat of a biopic or biopic or however you want to call it. And he was asked, well, do you consider the film a biopic or an adaptation? And he said, yeah, probably an adaptation. Yeah, an adaptation.
Well, if your source material is a novel, it's not really a biopic.
But it's an interesting...
Source material's off by a few years.
Yeah, but even as an adaptation, it's on the loosest of terms, an adaptation. And it would make me wonder, actually, too, like, I would be shocked if this got a nomination for Best Screenplay Adaptation, because it seemed, now I haven't read the book, but again, just through research of what the book was about and the elements in the book, this is basically, I took two characters from this book.
They need more words. It has to be like, thank you for letting me use your names, but I changed everything else. Thank you for letting me use your name, profession.
Right.
Like, it's like in improv where they give you like one line.
Sure.
They're like, it's... give me an adjective, give me a name,
Place.
give me an occupation, and give me a setting, and go.
Copenhagen.
Like, so many times, like it's like just those 4 elements you get, and like that's your.
I'm gonna say to its credit, I never went into this movie. There wasn't anything that told me this was actually a biopic or a biopic. There was nothing. There was nothing that really. There was nothing that really, even in marketing, that suggested this. I had only heard that this was a true character just through through history and whatnot, but there was nothing in the marketing that even suggested to me that this was, I just took this as being a drama. And while I was watching it, I was like going, this is interesting. I wonder how this did it play out this way, and that's interesting surgery for that time period to even consider, and this and that. And then when I researched it, I'm like going, oh wow, geez, why didn't, like, it would have been, like you said, this has been a project that had gestated for 7 to 9 years, and they should have, it would have been nice to tweak it a little bit more.
Well,
be a little bit
20
bolder.
different drafts on the script.
But they could have been bolder on this.
Actually, not that much.
And I'm just saying, I felt it could have been bolder. It could have had interesting takes on love, marriage, relationships, and it could have resonated into today's world for a movie that took place in the 20s. And they sort of missed that mark. Yeah.
But where it sings is the relationship between the two of them, and when the chemistry, and Alicia, especially what she has to go through in order to still be there for Lily.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, that, I think it sings there, but it suffers when Lily is going through all this, and you don't really feel what she's going through. At least it didn't get to me. And I may be in the minority, but I think it's just because there's too much artifice, and we don't really get the essence of who she is enough.
I'll say that I got enough from what she was struggling with in her relationship and what she was struggling with in this change of like her love.
That's what I mean.
But I didn't get enough, and so that part of her was completely, I understood that struggle. I didn't understand how it was impacting the rest of her life enough. I didn't understand how it was affecting her finances, her friends, how people looked at them.
I did too. I got how it affected the two of them. I mean, as a couple, but not her individually. I didn't get enough of that. It's like, what's her? Because when they lay out, okay, here's what's going to happen in the surgery. I hear it, I understand it, but I'm not sure how she's feeling about it. There's never really anything about.
Well, there was, again, I think we talked about it earlier. There didn't seem to be anything to overcome outside of the operations. Yeah, like there didn't seem to be a hardship about her not being an artist anymore. I think, to me, I didn't get it because she was transgender or wanted to change. It was just
her art herself, and she's Lily, if that's what she's creating now. I mean, if that's what they're going for, that's a fine idea and everything. But it wasn't really fully fleshed out.
I just got it that what was his name? Einer. Einar was the artist. Lily's not an artist. That's just not what I do. And like I said, outside of the park scene, there wasn't anything. There didn't seem to be a fear. Outside of that one montage of going to the various doctors.
Yeah, I was going to say, and the doctors and the coming down with the straight jacket.
No, but that's an external thing. What was her own sense of fear or desire, or what she said? I don't care. I mean, I just didn't know how she felt about the whole thing. Okay,
so
it's happening to her, but.
We spoke a little bit about the drafts, tons of drafts. They've also come out and said, because so many people have kind of pointed that with in the media, this is kind of coming more out. Transgender material is kind of more present. But they've also referenced that because this took so long when it was first kind of initiated, studios were very scared or didn't want to put up the money for it. It did go through tons of revisions. They had many different directors on board, actresses on board, everyone ranging from like Uma Thurman was thought about to Marion Code.
And Nicole Kidman.
For Lily, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But they had Leslie Hellstrom on, and I went, oh, that would have been, to me, that would have been.
But Nicole Kidman also did produce this film, so.
Yeah, but they were really bringing it. There was a lot of transition. So I just wonder if maybe, because we've said on here that they could have been bolder. And I wonder if that just comes from all of the resistance they got in the beginning.
Well, they said that they went back to an older version.
Yeah.
So they didn't use the 20th iteration. They went to a version that in fact, Lucinda said that the version that he actually shot was more reminiscent of something that was closer to the original that she had first wrote.
And I kind of wonder where it had gone. I wonder if it had gotten more bold, and then they went, and it was kind of to make it more just about the relationship. We'll get it made and get it put on. I think that when they were shooting this, like they were in the middle of shooting this when he was winning an Oscar.
Right. Yeah, they had started. Right.
So of course, I'm sure they wanted to draw upon his performance more, because if you have that on your belt, then you can put this out and say, as you mentioned, another transformation movie. We have an Oscar winner on board who's just won, and yada yada yada. That really helps push a film like this.
Sure. And I think what they were going with this film is more the dramatic, emotional toll of the story and the characters, and him in general. And I think maybe had it become a more physical problem, like the actual physical transformation of being a man into a woman, I think we would have gotten into the storyline of how medicine has evolved since the beginning of the 1900s to now. And I think that would have been a whole different type of storyline issue that would take away from the dramatic pull of what we as the audience is supposed to be feeling. So yes, after having just won an Academy Award, because like the very next day they released the first promotional photo of him in as full Lily. So I think they were baking off of the acting and performance rather than physical.
Yeah.
Here's another thing I thought about, because as I was watching this movie, I go, I want this movie has all the ingredients for me to be just beat up by the end of it. I want to be sobbing. I'm saying, what a tragedy. They should be together. All those kinds of things that I would want at the end of this kind of movie, and I didn't have any of that. I'm going, so as it's happening, I go, I see it all being cooked, but it's not tasting very well. And one of the things that didn't work for me was the whole idea when he first, because we see Einar and his fingers touch the brush by the ballerina, the tool and all this other stuff, and you go foreshadowing on, and when he's got she first asks him, here, pose for me because Ula's late, and no, and finally he does, and he's touching this, and it's almost like it's a surprise to Einar, that why I'm feeling these things. Why am I feeling them? It's like, well, you know who you are, and you knew early, because we learned later in life and we learned later from you that you had this whole thing with Matthias, and also you even tell your wife that Lily was always there. You just helped bring her back and stuff. And I'm going, so it's not a surprise to you, but it kind of, for me, it rolled out like, oh my God, what's happening to me? I'm so surprised. I'm going, you can't suppress it so much that it surprises you, can? I mean, I just didn't buy that.
Yeah, and to speak to that, actually, Tom Hooper did do an anatomy of a scene, of this particular scene during the whole painting. And he, like you said, mentioned the audience does learn that Lily was always present, but in a way dormant at this point. Tom Hooper said that the moment when he's realizing and reconnecting to Lily, and that's kind of what sparked Lily's presence again.
But we didn't know that prior. Like,
no, I mean, I appreciate what you just said there, that it was dormant and he's reconnecting. Yeah. But I just didn't buy it. It didn't feel like a reconnection.
But we didn't know. Yeah. Well, how can you have a reconnection if you don't know what you're connecting to?
Clearly,
because you find that out
I know,
much later on.
And that
in the
may
movie.
be why it comes across. Well, except you know that because you know the movie. You know that at some point he's going to try to change and become a woman.
No, I felt it was a bit contrived because this one moment, it was like this wasn't a big enough moment for him to realize, oh, I want to be a woman.
He's reconnected. But to me, it came across as, oh, gosh, what's happening to me? As opposed to, oh, I'm reconnecting. It just, I mean, it's just the subtlety of it, and that's how I perceived it. But because I perceived it that way, the whole premise of it didn't work because they're going, how do you not know who you? Because every experience I have and every transgender person I know is they know. It's not like you can. The idea that you can suppress and keep it dormant for that long and have it, I just have a hard time. It just didn't work for me. It just didn't ring authentic. I'd be maybe completely wrong on that, but that's how it came across to me.
For me, it didn't stand out. It was a very, I guess you can say, heavy-handed moment where I felt like everyone was kind of waiting for that moment. Also, this was one of the scenes that was highlighted in the marketing and in the trailers, which I thought at least did a good job of. A lot of the marketing trailer moments were in the very, very early part of this film. So it wasn't actually being held off as any big moment in the future. Those were all kind of grouped together with, I think, in the first 30 minutes, everything that was in the marketing. Sure. Yeah. So I thought that was handled well. But I guess I wasn't looking for it to be bad or good because I knew it was coming. So that scene had played out in my head before it ended because I had seen it.
I'd never seen it.
See. So I was like, I already knew.
Well, that's one thing we do know about John. He doesn't like to watch trailers. But, I mean, for me, it just was, I don't know. Again, I'm more surprised that the characters surrounding him just didn't know. It's like...
that they did know?
Or they didn't question.
Well, they're all bohemians, so it's like, whatever.
They're artists. You're right.
That was my problem as well, Demetri, that there wasn't enough external conflict to question and challenge him.
And again, going back to Gerda, who seemed to be much more open to certain things, and they had that one scene where... They had that one scene when she was undressing him, and he was wearing the nightie or
the slip.
Yeah, the slip,
whatever,
the night slip, and at first she was like, "Whoa," but then she sort of kind of got into it, and they had
very quickly.
Well, but again, I felt like, and again, I'm not. They were bohemian, let's just say. I don't want to say not all artists are, but she was much more open. She had much more open mind.
Sure.
And into it. And for a second, I was like going, we'll see this relationship, could last. And had I known that she may have been bisexual and or lesbian, I would have been, this is an interesting story to say. And were they ever chastised for doing this? Were they outcast?
And did that awaken something in Gerda?
Right.
That would have been,
And that would have been a fascinating story and levels of layer.
But I'm sure they decided, look, that's too much. Let's just deal with this issue. Let's get rid of that.
But you did say something a little bit. You said something earlier on that you weren't, that this should have been that movie that you should have had an emotional reaction, like an emotional, whether it was, whether it was heavy drama or sadness or elation or wow, this is what was overcome. And I agree with you that didn't happen for me. Here, outside of watching Gerda's and Alicia's performance, which drew me in.
I was emotionally connected to Gerda. I got what her challenge, her difficulty, her love. I got and her pain. I got all of that, but I just didn't have that same kind of reaction with Lily's journey.
Yeah, and when we came to the end of Lily's journey, that seemed odd to me too because she's in the hospital bed.
Yeah,
it appeared I mean, maybe I just misread it. It appeared as if the fever had broke.
Yeah.
And she woke up.
Yeah,
and she's like,
let's go outside.
Hey, let's go outside. It's like, no, you really shouldn't. No, let's go outside.
Such
and
a
it's
lovely
like,
day.
Yeah, it's a beautiful day. And I'm like, well, hey, the nurses said this is okay.
Sure.
Oh, okay, whatever.
Because
so
we
then she
always
goes
let her
outside.
after they come out of major surgery.
Sure.
Go ahead.
And you know, she's outside, and oh, it's so beautiful. And then I had this dream, and I'm like, wait, what?
Wait, is that
She's
it? What?
She
What?
what?
Exactly.
She just died? I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay. I'm like, well, and I thought she was better. And and it would have been nice to know, because you had talked about like the scientific reason. Like at that time, like that doctor, you know, that's in the 20s, that had to have been a really big deal.
Yeah,
It was,
I'm
and
sure
at the time, the doctor, he himself has actually spent like 30 years, you know, perfecting the surgery and like studying all
well
these
as he
cases
can,
and
yeah.
whatnot. He's actually like an expert in this field.
Sure.
And we only got so many facets of what the surgery is, and we didn't learn and go like fully in depth.
You know, obviously what they were
Okay.
going for is her full arc is when I've done this and now I can die a woman because I'm free.
Right.
You know, but it just it's like,
I
okay,
would've
it's a
liked to have
great
seen more
arc,
of a woman.
but they didn't earn it.
Yeah.
No,
if I
exactly.
may.
Yeah, I agree.
I kind of did agree with that, especially, I mean, I did get the notion that now she is metaphorically reborn as, and it was accepted by someone that was close and dear to her, being her mother, that now she's born as a woman and accepted now she can die.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
you know, die a happy woman in a way. And it's
And-
like,
okay.
it was way too quick.
And,
Yeah.
and then this is when again I saw the because when the scarf comes up, I leaned over to the person I was watching the movie with and I said, if I would get you 10, that scarf comes back in the end, and it's gonna represent her spirit at the end of the movie.
Did you say that?
I did. And then when it all happens, he goes, "You son of a..." I go, and it's just that, unfortunately, I saw too much. And that's why I said I don't want to see the manipulation happening because I just want to experience it. And because it just was too obvious, and they didn't go bold. Because if they had gone bold, I would be going, whoa, what, you know, you would have been. But because it was so safe, it gives me time to think. And once I start thinking, I go, okay, here's the obligatory. This is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and I don't want to be there. I don't want to be way ahead of the movie.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was unfortunate for me because I was cheering for it. I saw so much that was great in it and so much that was terrific, and I loved these moments in it, and they set up such great things, and then they just would fizzle out, and it was
Well, let's try to talk about something that maybe we all liked. John, maybe you liked. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Well, like one of the things, like again, I really enjoyed the cinematography. We talked a little bit about that and how.
Filmed on
his
Red
use of-
Epic Dragon.
Yeah, and how his use of light, like Denmark or Copenhagen, looked fantastic. I loved how Paris looked and how they made it look different. That art rules the day in Paris, which makes sense, art and fashion. But I also love the production design on this movie. Filming in Denmark, I felt was so Eve Stewart. That river that their flat was on, their apartment was on, and overlooked. You know, they had to transform that and get all those period piece sailing ships there. And apparently, there are so many people who have all those old throwback boats that they cleared it out, and those people were more than happy to sail their boats.
because they're so proud of this.
It's like, look at this, but it like there were beautiful shots and scenery of Denmark or Copenhagen that I thought was great, and there was so many picturesque like photos. Like I'd go, God, I wish I could take a photo like that because that looks beautiful. Whether it's the cloud and even those 4 trees. You know, so production design and even cinematography, I felt really was. I felt they were beautiful. I really like.
And I will agree with you absolutely. I thought the cinematography and the production design, except there are a couple of. This is where this movie gave and then took away from me because, again, I hated the framing on certain things. Not overall. It was just that it's like, oh, crap, here we go again, and it really distracted me, and it took me out of the movie. But overall, and when the way they made the beach, I mean the shoreline, all that kind of stuff was great. But even in the production design, I'm going, we're in a Bohemian's art studio, and it was blank. there was nothing artistic about it. The walls were this blue-gray. And I'm going, wait, these are Bohemian. Every artist loft I've been to, a Bohemian or seen
in the 20s. You've been there. I just don't know.
And that may be true. But all I'm saying is it's a fine choice. But I'm going, it doesn't really tell me anything about them. And maybe that's their choice, which is fine. They have every right to make that choice. I'm not saying it's a wrong choice. I'm just saying it didn't work for me because I didn't learn anything from them. And maybe they wanted them to be the arts in their own thing, and they were the ones with color and everything. But it just kind of went, okay, that's rather uninspiring to me.
Yeah.
It didn't really inform me. It wasn't really interesting to look at. And I went, okay, that's.
I completely understand that point of view. They said they purposely filmed it in prison-like colors with the blues and grays and whatnot, because every time he dressed up as Lily, which was very colorful wardrobes, it shows that even Lily didn't even belong there. So they wanted Lily to pop compared to the environment around her.
Yeah, but that didn't make sense for Gerda. Because Gerda, I don't see her living in that space.
They seem like more accepting and lively people than the atmosphere they live in. To me, it kind of gave me a feeling of they were always moving. And so that all they really brought with them was their clothes and
except they always came back there, right? And even when they went away, they kept their loft, and it was like, but this is the loft. I just don't see them not making that much more interesting than it was. They're artists, for crying out loud.
Another aspect of design in the movie was his Eddie Redmayne's makeup. And he was the same makeup artist as, I believe, Theory of Everything.
Jan Sewell.
Yeah, and so she did try to create a story of his hair color and and her makeup throughout the thing. Was starting with more vibrant colors, like a more vibrant red wig that was supposed to display really trying to become a woman and not really being comfortable as a woman yet, towards more naturalistic colors. And so there was the thought put behind it and the artistry put behind it of every aspect of this movie trying to have a story. And I think that the production design did. They said that there was kind of a symbolism to what they created, but the symbolism is kind of contradictory to the characters and the world.
Again,
and confrontation.
I don't know what a bohemian apartment would look like in the 20s. I would get a good idea in the 60s because we've seen enough representation of 60s, 70s kind of feel. Not in the 20s. I don't know. I didn't have a problem with the apartment.
I've never been to that one either. All I'm saying is it didn't reflect, to me, it didn't reflect those characters. It didn't reflect their personality. Now, I understand from a movie point of view why they did that, what you said. Okay, that's great. But then I go, again, you're forcing that rather than it come organically from your characters, which would, to me, support your story and your art better. It's you imposing it.
Yeah. Well, while we are talking about the apartments, something that I think was sort of kind of funny was because it was a low-budgeted film, and they had the two different apartments. They had Copenhagen and Paris, and they wanted to make them try to look a little bit different. And she goes on to say that they were looking for old French paneling. And she found some in a barn at some point. And she went to her art director and said, I bet we can buy some of these panels from eBay. And so they looked in magical eBay, and there were enough panels on eBay to make almost all of that set.
Wow.
So eBay helped craft this movie.
Impressive.
And they got their shipments on time.
Impressive.
And
buy it now.
Buy it now on eBay. So I find that, that's they didn't get it from IKEA. So yeah, I just found that was fascinating. Terrific. When you're thinking, you okay?
Oh, excuse me.
I just find that fascinating because that is the kind of thing that when you are on a limited budget, that you have to come
very
up
resourceful.
with. Yeah,
good for them.
Before we get into numbers or anything like that, and before we leave the performance aspect, I do want to talk a little bit. In researching this movie afterwards, there's been a lot of criticism about Eddie Redmayne being cast.
Right.
So as much as there's press out there about him winning another BAFTA and being commended for his acting abilities, there's just as much out there kind of negative that this role wasn't given to a transgender actor who's actually been through this. And for me, I was kind of surprised that there was so much
backlash.
Negative, yes,
Negative, okay.
backlash.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of one of those things that it's hard to talk about because you don't. I would say that if you want the person who's going to bring the truth to the role as much as possible. Sure. But as a craft, I'm of the belief that acting doesn't necessarily, you don't need to be exactly every detail and have the same background as your character on paper.
That's kind of the point of acting.
Yeah,
and then it would also suggest that if you need a trans person to play a trans, then a trans person can't play somebody who's not trans.
Well, I'm just gonna say, I think that we become. I think that social media and the lot has become way oversensitized. Too sensitive to all of this because this is a topic that comes up on almost every other movie. There was this movie, this Gods and Kings movie that's coming out
about race.
And the director came out and
whitewashed it.
He apologized. He absolutely he apologized
before it even came out.
Before the movie has even come out for
whitewashing.
For whitewashing.
For whitewashing. I remember talking about
straight out of context.
When you said whitewashing, I thought you meant like putting it in as whitewashing the subject. But no, he came out and apologized. And then on top of that, you had the director of Selma, I forget her name right now, please forgive me, comes out and applauds.
And the fact that you have to apologize for that, because people are gonna be upset with you for not remembering your name.
Right. Anyway, I should remember her name, and because it is an important part of the story. Because she comes out and applauds the director for apologizing, and I'm thinking to myself, says the woman who cast an English person to play somebody from the United States. I'm like, this is very hypocritical, and you're coming out to play. First off, Tom Hooper had Eddie Redmayne in his mind to play this role for a while. Mm-hmm. And he said, as far as, that gender spectrum, and we all have that balance of masculine and feminine, the thing about Eddie is he is drawn to the feminine. He has played women's parts before. He's played girls in parts in school's play. He played viola in 12th Night. And I just think that it's all about what actor that you pick for your movie. But just because let me try to set the other argument would be but how can you can see why Eddie Redmayne was picked. He has a history with Eddie Redmayne. Also, when the Oscar he wins, that helps. And that helps make it bankable, etc. So But they didn't know the Oscar.
I agree with that, but he's already a tried commodity. We already know him, and the argument would be, well, a trans person can't be that unless you give them an opportunity. So give us an opportunity, and then we will be bankable. So there is that argument to be made. And if I were the director and I had an opportunity to have a trans person in that, I would want them to audition, because they're going to bring something to the role that obviously somebody who isn't trans isn't. They don't have that experience.
Maybe, but...
And that's not to say that they would give a better performance, because it depends on the actor and how good they are.
Right.
So I get both sides of that argument. I don't know that there's an easy answer, but the fact that there's
not an easy answer unless you're like in the audition room and you've seen who knows how many people.
We don't know how many trans persons it went out to, or were available, or
if they went directly to Eddie Redmayne. You just don't know.
No.
And
I also don't like the idea that only a trans person can play a trans person, because I don't like the flip side of that.
It worked in the Crying Game.
That means but that would mean that then a trans person couldn't play somebody who's not.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that if you're a good enough actor, you should be able to play across the spectrum. And I think they should be equal opportunity for everybody. I mean, of course, we're not there yet, and that's pie in the sky, and hopefully we'll get there someday. And I think eventually, maybe, I don't know. But I just don't like the precedent that if it's a trans role, only trans can play it, because I don't like the flip side.
Right, and I think that's another good reason why they casted Eddie, because he can hit emotional beats for a storytelling perspective from an actor's ability that he has, compared to someone who is transgender. Maybe they can hit the physical standards that they needed in this film, but maybe couldn't hit the emotional,
the dramatic,
get as in depth.
But again, the argument
character.
would be, but how can somebody who's not trans know really at a core level what it's like to
But I don't think that. But that also implies that you have to be a method actor. Like, how can a non-drug addict play a
I agree with you. I'm just saying that's the argument.
No, and I get it, but you know, again, to Redmayne's, you know, to his point too, it's not like he didn't research this. He was on that movie Jupiter Ascending that was directed by the Wachowskis and Mia Wachowski. Is that right? That's what she goes by now, right? Mia. He went to her,
Mia.
because they were, and you know, he got a wealth of information and research from Mia. So it's not like
there's also an argument to be made for somebody who isn't trans, just because there's an objective viewpoint now. I can see it from different, as opposed to somebody who's in it and may not be able to see the forest for the trees. I don't know. I'm just saying that you can make an argument either way.
You can. You know, listen, I think Eddie Redmayne is a strong enough actor. I think I didn't have a problem with his performance. And again, it's not like it's not as if he had gone into this role blindly. He actually used resources around him and friends who were transgender, people that he had worked with. I mean,
he reached out to the community.
He reached out to the community. I don't fault.
Well, isn't the upset more about not necessarily? Well, sure, obviously it's part because it wasn't a trans person portraying that role, but it was also because they didn't really get the story of a trans and what a trans person might go through in that process.
I think
had they done that, I don't know that there'd still be upset, but I don't know if there had been as much as I guess is a better way of saying that.
But also the times are just so different.
Yeah.
And back in the 1920s, there weren't a lot of documented cases. This was one of the first that was actually fully documented. So hence we are telling the story now. Compared to all these cases,
not necessarily.
Yeah, compared to all these cases and how medicine has evolved since then within a century.
True.
All the stories and just people's lives are so vastly different from even back in that time.
Absolutely.
But I agree with your point that I think that everybody has a right to weigh in. Absolutely. If you're going to put something in the public arena, people can say whatever they want about it. But I do think that people they speak because it's their. You know,
it's a knee jerk.
Yeah, and it's like, why don't you give it some thought, put some time in, because I just think they just spew without really thinking about it and getting. Anyway, it's one guy's opinion about that. So
no, but I think, and again, to the strength of our show, to the strength of what we do, we bring up these topics. We don't shy away from this. I think it is an important thing to bring up, and you know, by playing both sides of the fence, we offer the other side. We offer the argument.
Yeah.
But I think
and
it's
for no
important,
other reason. That's why I think the movie's important.
Exactly.
Because of all that, that discussion that went on there.
Yeah.
Not just, I'm not just talking here. I'm talking about this universe. I'm talking about absolutely. Should we hire trans people? I think that's a worthy debate.
Should there be more transgender actors? Yes.
But should they have hired people from Denmark then to play the lead? Transgender Denmark.
Does that mean if it's a Danish girl, and Alicia was Swedish? She's Swedish. She is.
Yeah.
And you know, the only time in the movie they refer to the Danish girl, Matthias is talking about her. He's talking about Gerda. He's not talking about Lili.
Right.
Yeah.
And she's Swedish.
Yeah.
And Eddie's British, so it's like, I don't know. How do we parse that out?
Yeah, how do we parse that out? Because it is called
the double
acting.
standards.
And
I didn't, the whole thing about the Selma, I mean, okay, he was British, or he is. He is British, and he's playing.
Martin Luther King. It's like, so where do you get off saying that you apologize?
You hired somebody you thought was going to be an amazing job, and he did.
And he did.
I know.
Right, and you know,
it's just about believability.
Yeah. It's very, you know,
that's the key.
It's just been happening a lot. It happened in Aloha with Emma Stone, and it happened with. I mean, it's been happening. Right. It's been happening a lot lately. And now that we're really precision, now we're going to transgender. Like, we're not even talking about race. We're just drawing it down to transgender.
But that's why I think it's worthy, because I think you have to have those discussions, bring it into the awareness, and, you know, make whatever changes that need to be made such that we can have a better experience and people have more opportunity. All those kinds of things. You have to. You have to.
Sure.
You just need to do it with vitriol.
Agreed. So, you know, another thing, too, that I think was important to this movie was, well, you know, composer extraordinaire who can knock out a score.
I know you're happy with this.
Well, it was just interesting. I didn't know it was him until the end of the movie, and I found that I found the music helped set a tone.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find the music to be manipulative. I actually found in this case it actually worked hand in hand with various scenes. And Desplat, he says that this was one of the hardest movies that he had to score.
Mm-hmm. What, because of the turnaround was so quick? Or was it because of the subject? Or did he get into why?
It was his biggest challenge was to convey what Einar has inside his own self, which is Lily, and how it's going to bring it out.
Right.
And it should be an undercurrent of happiness, something that's irrepressible, which we talk about, that you can't stop. But that, for him, was the biggest challenge. It wasn't so easy. The music had to mix something beautiful and moving, but with a little spice of anxiety and danger.
Yeah.
And he said this was probably, one of his most difficult scores to compose.
And he was doing it while they were editing. So.
Yeah. So, and it's, and I think the score is an undercurrent to this movie. I think he conveyed what he wanted to convay without oversaturating and without being manipulative.
It seems very light.
Yeah.
Everything, the score-wise, felt... twinkling is not the right word, but it was just light in the back for me, at least.
Yeah.
And maybe any time that I actually noticed it, it rippled out to be like, oh, this is an interesting piece of score. It was something that had that happiness to it, but was very gentle.
Right.
I noticed the music more so in the slowest moments when he's in this striptease club and he's touching himself.
That's when I noticed.
I really noticed because there was no words, there was just music and emotions there. And then also when he's playing with the dress during when he was modeling for her, there was the key moment where now he's having this realization and the music is starting slowly swelling. So I felt it in the slow moments where there was no dialogue.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that scene because I like that scene. It was a strong scene for me, and not because of Redmayne, but because of the stripper.
Yeah, that's why I thought it was a terrific scene.
The focus on her facial expression, especially at the end when she was like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm not. All right, time to go." But her expression towards him.
Yeah.
And doing
I
what
said
thought
to her
that was a
earlier,
great
when she
scene.
realizes he's not looking at me the same way as everybody else, that's weird.
Yes.
But then she realizes, oh, wait a minute, this... okay.
I'm going to play this out.
I'll go with this.
Yeah.
And then here, let me really show you something.
Yeah.
Because I know you're getting this in a different way than these other people. I thought it was terrific.
Yeah.
It was terrific.
Yeah,
I thought it was
it was a well composed scene.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Very well composed scene.
And people are already speculating he might get nominated for Best Score.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for Academy Award.
Interesting. He gets nominated almost every year.
I say this all the time. I don't recall the score. So and even this time I'm going, no, I gotta remember this because I come in here and you guys are saying all this and I'm going, yeah, I don't remember it. And I honestly was trying consciously to pay attention to it, and I don't remember a thing about the score. I honestly don't. I don't know how what was overhanded or if it was right on point. I have no idea. I don't recall it.
Did you see Star Wars? Do you remember
I
the
did
score
see
from
Star
that
Wars.
one?
Yeah, I did see that. But
it was by a guy called John Williams.
I'm trying.
You might have heard of him.
Maybe you can bring it out of him.
And I'm trying to recall it and everything. I don't know. Like you said that in that scene, I went, yeah, I don't remember music in that scene. So, and for whatever reason, it doesn't stick. So I feel like I can't talk about it. The only thing, since I don't have my own memory of it, so I'm trying to read what other people have said about it and stuff. And the only thing I heard was that, only one review I read someone say that it was overwrought and heavy-handed. Everybody else said that.
The only times I noticed it was very light.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't find it to be overwrought.
Well, that's
usually
good.
in a movie, it's funny that you mentioned that because you did talk manipulation.
Yeah.
But apparently, it seems the one thing that didn't manipulate you at all was the music.
But I don't know because it never.
It's supposed to convey an emotion.
Like if I walk out a movie and I honestly go, what's the music in that? I don't recall until the credits are rolling and you hear the end credit music. I go, oh right, music, yeah, and then I don't know.
Right.
See, I noticed it when the scarf was flying away.
Some weird thing in my sight.
Oh, she's free. She's free.
All right.
Again, moments of no dialogue.
Although I did notice that because as soon as it was windy, I'm going, okay, here goes the scarf. And then like a minute later, it's like, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
So you're like, I'm just happy my point was proven.
No, I was kind of like, no, I was a little upset by it because I go, shoot, because it felt a little cliche.
predictable.
Well, I feel like a lot of people have been aware of this movie for a long time, especially since it came out in the festival circuit. But I don't have the numbers with me, but they're not that great.
The IMDb has it as 6.5. Rotten Tomatoes is 71 for Tato meter.
It did a very
And
good
76
per
for
average screening.
audience.
It had a very good per average screening.
Yeah,
6
I mean, it's
for
done
2015.
449 theaters.
for a movie that's opened up in November 27th.
Yeah.
We're 3 weeks in. Worldwide it's done 8.7.
Yeah,
so that's a 9. So
off a $15 million budget.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say it's only
Yeah.
like 15. It's $15 million.
So
So
Was anybody surprised by that?
what, the
15
$15 million?
15?
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
I
What-
think they could have done it for less.
I was just because usually
Did you think it
hear,
was too much, or-
period piece, it's going to be expensive. I'm going 15 million for a movie.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
just-
to me, they did
That's-
work on the cheap. They bought
Yeah.
their stuff from eBay.
I know, but that's my point. Is I go, that's
They spent
impressive.
more on shipping.
I'm sure that's because they said the finance was really hard. And I'm sure the reason.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would go, oh yeah, who's gonna invest? What's the market? How are we gonna get a return? I get all those questions because that's what every question is on that kind of thing. And I'm just surprised that it was only 15 million because you typically period pieces are more expensive. You got
Location shooting,
but
they must have
these-
gotten good tax credit.
Well, they got a really
in
good tax
Denmark.
credit for. I think they actually shot in Germany. And they did get a lot of tax.
Berlin.
But you look at it, and it was a lot of just very
interiors, yeah.
intimate interior scenes that, as you said, were. You focused on the.
We didn't have the money, so we didn't bother painting it.
Like they just like dealt with the piece that they were painting. Like that covers a lot.
Oh, that's a good story. Did you guys know about the story about
The art.
about the art? And
I know a little bit about the art.
So Tom Hooper was talking about it. I was at a screening with him, and so he was talking about the fact that he really wanted the actual art. He wanted the actual paintings that they made, especially of Lily. And so they were trying like crazy, and they found them, and it was going to be so expensive, way more expensive than the actual budget for the movie. And he's going, no, it has to be the actual art. We can't do it. I mean, it's just we need to have that authenticity. And at some point, they were a week prior to shooting, somebody finally went up to Tom and said, you realize that the Lily in the paintings isn't Eddie Redmayne, so that's not going to look.
God.
And he just hung his head because it hadn't even dawned on him. Because then at some point he finally went, right. So,
Different Lily.
yeah, so and then they had their painter who did all the work.
Yeah.
They got to start painting on everything, and I just went, wow, that's amazing, because for weeks nobody's saying anything to Tom Hooper because he's the director. He really wants these. We got to make it happen. And finally, somebody with some sense went, yeah, it's not going to work even if we get
Yeah,
him.
but they did.
Yeah.
They did draw inspiration from
Sure.
the paintings and the
Yeah.
recreations, and
the
including
environment.
like Amber Heard's painting of the
Yeah.
ballerina. They just kind of they used the look of it, very inspired by, but obviously her face was changed.
Yeah.
So they did pay attention to
Sure,
the
yeah.
art.
Yeah.
They did try.
Yeah.
And
know,
they rebuilt the apartment physically, based off of the original paintings.
Right. So, and Alicia, to her credit, some of her most challenging scenes was when they put charcoal in her hand because she didn't
Yeah,
know how
she's not an artist,
she didn't know how to draw. She was like doing big
Charcoal's
sweeping
hard.
things, and
Yeah.
right.
Charcoal's
and,
very hard.
And she's like, yeah, because you're not supposed to you're not supposed to
stop.
You're not supposed to
Just
stop,
yeah.
and. She's like, yeah, I wasn't getting it right. But when I finally got it right, it was great. But I'm not an artist. It's like, you're an
Look what
actor
I
who's
did.
being an actor. Yeah.
She took it.
She's not
I'm not an artist, but I played one in a movie.
Does that mean you can only
She
have an
trained for
artist
2
to
weeks.
play one?
You can only have an
Yeah.
artist, a female artist from Denmark, play that role.
No, but
That's what I'm putting down.
she did do through training. I think
She
for
did
art.
2 weeks of training
She
of
pulled it
how
off.
to,
I
how
did-
to
I
properly
never
draw
went-
and all that.
She's not an artist. I never
No.
Right.
never did.
I never did that. Again, to me, strongest performance. I believe that this movie rests on her performance and her portrayal. And again, I'll go as far as I
Certainly the
would
emotional
be.
core of it is from.
Yeah, and I would be a little bit surprised if she were not to get some semblance of a nomination for the Oscars.
This is my question, because
Yeah.
I think that a lot of people are taking away her performance. What do you feel? Which category do you feel she should be
Actress.
No, actress? But leading or supporting?
Well, wouldn't Lili be the lead
leading.
actress?
I would say leading.
That's my question.
I know. No, I'm not kidding you because
But he's an actor.
I know, but I mean,
I know,
the
but-
blogosphere is going to go crazy. The
I'm
Twitter
sorry.
universe.
I
I'm
would
sorry,
say
but
no.
She was a
Yeah, but
Actually, to answer that, I would say leading because watching this film, I had a conscious moment. I was like, they're showing her just as equally a lot
And
of
she has
time
a-
as they are with Eddie. I was like, she has to be.
Her
leading.
arc is bigger.
It's
more. It's clearer. And to me, and she is the Danish. They even refer to her as the Danish girl.
I know.
Yeah,
In my opinion, it's a co-lead. I definitely think leading actress. I think that part of the reason that sparked my curiosity was the fact that along this production road, that the role of Lili was considered for a woman.
Yeah.
And in that case, if it had been a woman and not Eddie Redmayne, and then you had two women playing these roles, then would it make
that's a great place.
would it that change it so that Alicia's role became supporting? I was just in my head. I was trying to figure it out.
But if you'd done it that way, I think if there was a woman playing the role of Lili the whole time, I think first of all, clearly it would have been a different movie. But she would have been the lead. I think we would have seen it differently.
I agree. No, but you're right. But that's not. We have Eddie Redmayne playing the two characters, and we have Alicia playing Gerda, and again, to me,
think it's a lead.
It's a lead role.
Hers is a lead role.
She's the lead. She's the lead
screen
actress.
time alone.
Yeah.
And again, I think well deserving of a nomination. Listen, she's been having a fantastic year.
Ex
If she doesn't
Machina,
get nominated for this, Ex Machina could definitely do it.
Yeah.
It's a breath of fresh air because this year we're seeing a new crop blended with yes, we have the Jennifer Lawrences of the world. We've got Emily Blunt. We've got Shailene Woodley. Fantastic actresses. We were just introduced to, I think, the wonderful Daisy Ridley, who I think can have a great career. And Alicia here is just wonderful as well. Scarlett Johansson and Brie Larson. We're seeing a great crop of these actresses coming up, and I think it's amazing. I think it's a great breath of fresh air for the industry when we are talking about women and gender in film, and it's great to see people like an Alicia who can handle a role like this, and I always look forward. I look forward to what she can do next.
She has been all over the genre market this year. And I find that real impressive. Not only do I like her, but she has really bounced around from indie sci-fi to this drama to she I believe was in Also Man from U.N.C.L.E. She's she's been in a lot and kind of all over the market, which is it's good.
And Demetri, to your point, you're saying there's this new crop of strong female leading ladies. I think it also is reflecting what Hollywood is now. Like there are more stories coming out with strong leading females, and I think now that we have the talent. Yeah, let's not get into that debate. But but also it's like now we have strong stories that are coming out about females. We also have the women that are strong enough to portray them.
Absolutely.
So I think it's just great of like what the time is in film.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree with you more. We have the female Ghostbusters coming. I just think
again something that's crazy. You haven't even seen it yet, and the Twitterverse going nuts.
Goes nuts.
But I'm excited.
What a horrible idea.
I mean,
horrible idea.
It's so again, that is why I love that I love this because it is really a breath of fresh air that we don't have to say focus. And again, so I don't want to piss anybody off again, but we don't just focus on I get Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah,
but she gets a ton of attention, and with her new friend Amy Schumer, and they're in People magazine and whatnot, which is great, fine.
She's even tired of herself. So.
Yeah, and so I neglected to say Amy Schumer, who's probably in one of the best comedies, this past year. It's just great that we have a really great crop of diversity and how these, and great portrayals and strong women in film. So that's why, I like the attention that Alicia's getting right now. I want to see her in more films. You just hope that they don't burn you don't want to over publicize and be smart about it. Like, it's great. Like, Daisy Ridley's in Star Wars. That's all you need. She's been doing some things here and here, but she's not in our face. And Alicia hasn't been in our face. She's gotten great notices for Ex Machina, which is one of the, makes my top 5.
Yep.
And yeah. And so that's why. And I see her performance in this, and without that strong performance, the rest of the movie for me would just not have worked if you didn't have that strong
I
female
wish
lead.
they had given the same amount of time and attention that they gave to her character as they did for.
I agree with you 100% on that.
Because it would have been a much more even film. Mm-hmm. And it's
interesting because from the marketing, am I wrong? Like, you sort of get that it's going to be about Lily. Mm-hmm. And then as I'm watching this movie, I'm like going, no, this movie's her. Like, this is Gerda. Yeah, and it's about her relationship.
And I think it all comes down to the fact that it was, on one side, we had an actor doing an external thing, and it was artifice, and the other one came just from inside out, was just being. She was present from the moment. And I get that the other one, Lily, is it Lily or Lily? I can't remember.
Lily.
All right.
Anyway,
based on the flowers that she brought.
Yeah, send your emails to me. That she can't be that way in the beginning, but I wanted her to have that same presence as Gerda did.
Yeah,
and she never really got there. From
and regarding Redmayne, he's a fantastic actor. In his next role, he's in the Harry Potter spin. I want to see him in a role where he's having fun. That's all. I want to see him in a role where he's having a
might
good
get that with Harry Potter.
time. I'm sure, because he seems like he could be an actor that could have a good time. These transformation movies, you could tell that he's. Well, but you could tell there's a lot of work that he puts into it, which is great. Don't get me wrong.
Extremely proficient.
I would like to see him in a role where I can go, he looks like he's having fun. Yeah. Funny.
Thank you.
I got that. I just want to see him have fun. And I think he can get away with it, and he can do it. And, I think this Harry Potter movie that's coming up could be that role that
Magical Beast.
Magical Beast, that's the one. Thank you.
Fantastic Magical Beast.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Something like that.
So,
and where to find Harry Potter?
What haven't we covered?
Got everything.
Is there anything else we want to talk about?
No, I think.
Do you get enough your conflicts and your?
I think I put out enough conflicts. I think I mentioned a few.
All right. Well, last thoughts, Marisa.
Overall, I did enjoy this film. Just for the internal and what these actors were able to portray in acting and performance-wise, and just the story in general, because Lily was a pioneer, and that's what they always said, that she was a pioneer for the transgender community. And I think it's always great to get back to where a big topic of discussion starts from, and to see a story that was mostly real. It was real, and what this film portrayed, it was real. I think it was great. Another fun story to learn. Maybe fun's not the best word, but like another real story that people should be. Yes, right.
Yeah,
people should be aware and learn from. I always love that.
I will second that. I will second you, Marisa. I think that I'm happy this story got made and someone put their money in to get this on the screen. Really enjoyed the actors. It just makes me want to see more from them. But it doesn't hit great because it doesn't show me the world as much. I wanted to see how the outside world impacted these people as well. But I'm glad that I know these people existed and know a little bit more about their art, and that it has caused more conversation, and the research was interesting, so I thank it for that.
Yeah, I mean, well, you mentioned Lily's a pioneer, and I think that's the biggest problem with this movie. I didn't catch that she was a pioneer I didn't get that she was a pioneer. And I wish there was more. This movie pretended to be bold, but it played it too safe from a story aspect. And it was the story aspect that I probably ended up disliking the most. I love the relationship, but I felt it could have gone farther had we gone to source material. They had source material, but yet they fictionalized. They are the only two characters from the book that are real. Okay? Those two. Everybody else In the movie, is
there's no Matthias?
I don't know. There's no Hans. There's no, and and I like these characters in the movie, but it would have been interesting had they. That would have been the bold move. Just take from that source material. You could have made an extremely compelling and yet digestible movie for the audiences, and people would have praised it. It had it been really good. People would have praised it for taking that step, and so that's the way I feel. Strong performances. Alicia Vikander, I think, should be nominated. I thought she was fantastic. She really held this movie on her shoulders. Eddie Redmayne, another wonderful transformation movie. I think he did very well too. I liked watching everybody. Matthias, I liked watching everybody in this movie. It just, from a story aspect, I just, especially after researching it, I was like, why? Yeah. This is interesting.
One of the best things about
story.
The movie for me was that it made me know these people. It made me do this research. And so I learned all about this, because prior to that, I didn't know. I just wish the movie had been as heroic and as tragic as the real life events. And even prior to knowing all that, I still felt that way in the movie. So it's not like, oh, I learned the real thing and then I felt less of the movie. I already felt that way from the movie, which made it even stranger after learning all these things, going, you had all this at your disposal and you chose not to utilize it because you chose other things, which, again, you have to make choices, and they made those choices. They just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I truly applaud the film for getting made and being about what it was, and then creating this conversation and all the subsequent conversations that it has created for other people. And for that, I applaud it again.
Same here.
So, all right. That's
Thank
it.
you.
Where can they find you?
Well, you can support me on Twitter at dmovies1701. Support me. I usually just tweet about movie stuff. I love talking movies, so please do.
And I am at
Twitter?
Sarah_Stretton. That is my Twitter. Thank you.
You can follow me on Twitter at Serafini TV.
And you can only find me here at the Popcorn Talk Network. And check out all our other shows.
Email me.
No,
you don't want to share that email?
No. Email here.
Do you hear the light, happy music?
Is that what that is?
It's very light.
Oh, no, I just thought it was ringing around. But tune into Popcorn Network. We have all kinds of shows. We have...
What are your? I'm listening to the music.
No.
I'm on Box Office Breakdown. Always come.
We got
talk about
Schmoes
money.
Knows. What else we got? What else can they tune into?
There's profiles, like she said, Box Office,
Jedi Alliance, DC Marvel movies.
There's so many.
Just a ton.
So much content.
Keep the conversation going. We love it when you tune in, and we love it when you have your comments. So please do that. We'd love to hear what you have to say about this movie and others. And we will talk to you next time. Bye.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the rest of the Anatomy of a Movie staff, we would like to thank you for listening and subscribing to the show. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to email or tweet us. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been Anatomy of a Movie.